So, all right. Zoom session, what is it, 3? Is it 3? Is it 4? I lost track. I think it's 3, right? Yeah. So what I'd like to do this morning is answer some of your questions in case you have any on the assignments that we did and on the quizzes that you had. If there is any confusion where you feel you're still not sure about a basic step that you need to take in order to get to the answer. Just let me say this one thing. What Excel does, and I've seen this now a few times, when I give you these templates, they all of a sudden, they round up or down, and that can be sometimes the reason why if you don't use Excel, you have a different answer. It should not be different because it just shouldn't. Excel is as, you know, as how do you say, correct as it comes. But I've seen it now with one case study where people have the right answer, but it's not the answer that I had on Excel. So what I did is I updated that quiz, and of course you all get the full points, but I basically hand wrote in the percentages for the profits because that's where the mistake happened. So if you have something like this happening, just let me know and say, I'm not really using Excel and why do I get a different answer? And then we walk through it together. Any assignment or quiz answer that you have a question with or just get stuck, just send me an email. I'll send you the answers for them. And then if you still don't get it, we'll go on the phone and we'll do the whole thing together. So I don't want you to think you're being left in the dark and, you know, you're like, oh my God, I'm doing all this every week is a quiz and I still don't get it. And, you know, it's overwhelming. So I don't want you to be overwhelmed. Especially for you, Marilyn, I love you very much. You're such a perfectionist. Marilyn is one of these people who is so detail oriented in OCD. She reads everything like with the fine-tooth comb, which I love, but she's freaking out every time, you know, something's not perfect. First of all, Marilyn, don't worry about your grades. No one ever has gotten a worse grade in my class since I'm teaching, which is 6 years, than a C. Because to me, it's really not about the grades. Do I want you to learn the material? Of course, but it's up to you how much you want to learn. So if you don't want to do the assignments or you don't want to do the test or everything is, you know, wrong and all that stuff, it's up to you. You take out of this course whatever you want to take out of this course. I will give you the right answers. I walk you through the case studies. I'll get on the phone with you one-on-one, so we'll do everything together. To me, it's not about your grade. To me, it's about you retaining the information that I think you should have. And that's what I'm focused on. So it's not your grade. So even if you never do anything and never show up, you still get a C. So don't worry about that. Because I don't give Fs. I think it's stupid. This is an extension class. I mean, this is just silly. Anyway, I've never said this. I'm not going to say this to you, silly. But the point is, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed with anything. First of all, you study at your own pace. You do these assignments whenever you want to do them and whenever you have the time to do them. There are deadlines on them. So what? It does say I'm deducting points because I have to say that. I've never deducted points for anyone who sent in something late because, again, we're all adults. We have a lot of stuff going on. We need to do this when we have time. So don't worry about it. As long as I have everything by the end of the semester, so I can actually give you a grade, that will be great. If I don't have it when the semester is over, I can't give you a grade. So that's the only thing I would like to ask you. If you want to stay on time and doing this assignments, you know, it's good for you, but theoretically you can do them all on June 10th if you want and do an all-nighter and just do them all then. I don't care, it doesn't matter. I just want you to know I'm not remote, I'm here. Sometimes it takes me a day or two to just set something up with you. So don't be frustrated about that. But we do have office hours #1 every 2 weeks, but we also do this in between whenever you guys get stuck and whenever we can set something up. So again, sometimes I have to move you around a little bit because we're also producing a TV show right now. So it's something in the middle a little bit, but just, you know, bear with me, but I will be there and I will get on the Zoom call with you and I'll walk you through it. So that's that. Any questions? Okay, now let's dive in here. Oh, by the way, I want to say something real quick about the group project. If you are in a group project, obviously you automatically get your 10 extra credit points. And thank you for the group leaders for setting all this up and for doing these group meetings with everyone. It's very much appreciated. Unfortunately, you don't get more points for that. But I hope you enjoy the process of leading your team. So if someone doesn't want to be in a group and wants to do their own project, it is fine. Just do your own project. You'll learn all the things that go into the business plan as you go through the modules. You don't need to know everything now. In fact, you cannot know everything now because you're not even halfway there. How do you know what this thing looks like? You can't. So just work with your group, take the information that's in the module as it's provided to you, and then ask me questions. Toro sent me a whole list of questions the other day, which were fantastic. I love your questions, Toro. So what I did is I actually created a discussion board because of you, Toro, and I put all these questions in there and my answers. So there are project discussion groups there with people that ask me questions when I think they're actually good questions because they clarify something and, you know, people might want to know the answer. I put them all in there. So feel free to ask me anything about what your group gets stuck on or what you don't know or how, whatever it is, just ask, okay? And then I'll answer the question, of course. If you don't want to do the group project, just let me know that you're opting out of the group so I can remove you from the group. That's all. So you don't have to do it. It's an extra credit. So it's not like, you know, put more things on your plate if you don't want to. It's a great exercise to put together a business plan for a project because you have to do that in order to get anyone to give you money. It's kind of an important thing. But if you don't want to do it, not a problem. No one's, you know, forcing you to do this. Okay, any questions on the group projects at all?
Yeah, I did. There was one person, I forget her name. She said that she was doing the project, and I'm trying to get in a group. I wasn't one, but then I'm in two, but I haven't had anyone really contact me to help me get into the group. And I did say I needed help, so I don't know.
Okay, hold on. You know, Marilyn, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to check the group that you're in. I know I put you into a group. I'm going to check the group that you're in. I will connect you with the group leader. So once we're done with the session here, I'm going to go online. I'm going to look. So you just stay on, okay? So that I can give you the person that is leading your group.
Marilyn, did you say you're in group 2?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if Matthew's on here or not, but I put a post like 2 weeks ago to our group in the group discussions, like on the left-hand side where there's the groups icon on the main menu. And then if you click on that, like I did put a discussion thing 2 weeks ago and nobody responded to it as of like last Wednesday. And Matthew, which I don't think he's on right now, but he mentioned that actually never sent out a notification to anybody. So nobody knew that it was out there, which is probably why I never received anything. So I do apologize for that, but there is, I don't know if you know, it's on the left-hand side of like the main UCLA group. You can click on it and then you can see that there should be group 2. And I'm checking
we're group 2.
quick. You know what? Actually, no, you're not in that group.
Guys, to clarify real quick, we have right now on Zoom 3 classes. So it's not just one class. Okay. So right now we have 6 groups on here and they're all called group 1 or 2. So
gotcha.
Sorry about the confusion. But what I do with the Zoom,
right,
because I'm teaching 3 classes parallel at UCLA every semester, I combine you all in a Zoom class because A, you get to know each other, you get to know people that are actually not in your course, which I think is great. And then B, I don't have to do the same thing 3 times. Yeah, it's also me being a German efficiency police here. So Joseph, I will connect you with Marilyn. The whole discussion board thing, what I found on Canvas, if I don't send the link of the actual discussion board section to everyone's email, they don't have it. I had the same issue because discussions does not send out notification. That's why I always send an email. By the way, I put up a discussion board. Here's the link. So I sent them the specific link to where I'm going, to where I want them to go. I don't know why it doesn't send out a notification. Stupid, but it doesn't. I had the same issue. Canvas is
thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, and Canvas is a little tricky. It's not the most reliable thing. I also don't get all emails. The other day, someone sent me an email saying, I sent this, and I can see it. It was sent through Canvas because when I get it on my email, on my UCLA Milio email, I can see it come in. But then I go to Canvas to respond usually because I want everything in the same place, and I'm not seeing it there. So something is going on. If you guys send me an email that I don't respond to within 24 hours, that means I didn't get it because I always respond within 24 hours. So bug me, text me, or do whatever you have. I think most of you have my cell number because we've spoken. Maybe I'll just put that in the chat here. Chat. Where's the freaking chat? Hold on. Chat. There's a chat. Oh, Slack instead of group project. Okay, I think that's good. So 310-989-2358 is my cell. Text me if you don't hear anything within 24 hours so I know I didn't miss anything, okay? Okay, I think we got this. We're going to move on now with the screen share. All right. See if I can get the screen on here. Share. Do you see my beautiful PowerPoint presentation? Good. That is good. That is good. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what a budget should be and why it should be what it should be. We're going to talk a little bit about how and where we can reduce it in order to reduce it in a way that it doesn't affect our production quality and it still gets us a bond. We're going to talk a little bit about guilds. By the way, and I don't know if Cheryl is here today. There she is, Cheryl. Cheryl works with the DGA and she gave me an amazing, I did a Zoom interview with her. She gave me an amazing Zoom interview about guild bonds, residuals, where they go, how they are, calculated, what people need to do, all the steps, which I think I put in the module under the guild section this week. Watch it. It's only 20 minutes long. And Cheryl, thank you again for doing this. And it is a fantastic interview. It's very good for you to just know what you need to do when you do anything with the guilds. We're going to talk about.
Make my job easier.
Yes, Cheryl. So they don't call with stupid questions, right? You can say, remember you were in the class with me? Just look at my video. You can call. Maybe I should send you a link and then you can use it to send it to people.
Exactly.
If you have questions, watch this link. So it's obviously an unlisted link, so it's not published. It only goes to the people that actually get the link. So Cheryl, I'm happy to send you the link if you want, so you have it if you ever want to share it with someone. But so it's just for us to enjoy. So thank you, Cheryl, for taking the time. So we're going to talk about profitable recruitment structures and what that entails. We're talking about waterfall ranking, who gets paid when and why. And we're talking about the managing of the different funding sources that are available today to us. So here we go. There we go. So what a project should cost is obviously dictated by a few things like the script, the genre, the location, the talent. These are the main things. There's 1,000 other things, but these are the main things. So if you have a script, it's shooting in, it's supposed to be on the moon. Obviously, you're shooting it in a studio. Obviously, it's going to have a lot of visual effects. If you're shooting, a script with, Sharon Stone, B-level actress, probably less. I shouldn't say that. She's a fabulous actress. She might even be B+. It's going to be a different kind of budget than if you're doing maybe Halle Berry. So these things, obviously, talent above the line, below the line, affect our budget. And some of that we can massage, and we should massage when we find out that our pre-sales, which is to the point how much should the project cost, do not support our budget. Every time, and I really say, every time I put a budget together, I, of course, have a wish figure. And then every time I get my sales estimates, my dream bursts. Because now I realize I have to lower my budget. And it happens every time. So it is okay for you to break down the script, have a line producer do it if you have someone. I usually hire a line producer. It costs me about $1,000 to just get it properly broken down based on what it should be, just based on the script. They get quotes, they talk to visual effects houses. If there's a lot of set design, they get quotes for set design. The line producers really go into detail about what the script should cost. So then they give me their number, and they don't care about sales estimates or anything, nor do I at that point, because I just want to know how much money do I actually need to do this properly. So then when I have that budget, I work my way backwards in meeting my estimates. For your business plan, obviously you're not going to hire a sales line producer at this point. You're just going to assume that you're going to end up having the budget be supported by around 70 to 75% from your international distribution revenues. I don't want you to have to hire someone to pay them $1,000 for something that may or may not happen. So for that exercise, you know what the number should be. And then when the line producer comes back to you later, when you're starting to raise first monies, then you can massage the budget that they give you to meet that number. We reduce our budget by working on things like deferring some costs. I usually start with deferments. So that way I'm not actually reducing, I'm just moving it. I'm moving it from the front to the end. I'm moving it to the recoupment schedule. That's the first thing, because then I get still all I want. I just pay them at a different time. So my first conversation is with a visual effects house and a post house. And I tell them both, I need you guys to defer half of your cost to the back. I'll pay you a premium of 10% on that half that you're deferring to the recoupment schedule. And then they're happy and I'm happy. So what that does for me, it reduces my budget by basically half of the visual effects cost and and the post cost, which is significant. And then of course I look at my script and I say, how can I reduce my schedule? The script translates directly to shooting period. Every scene takes a certain time to be shot. So if I move locations together, so I don't take as much time for moving, you know, like I don't have a company move, I don't have to move from one location to another location. I always do that. That's the second first step I'm doing. I'm seeing which scene can I move to a location that I already have. And it doesn't have to be the same location. It could be a different room in that location, or it could be outside instead of inside of that location. So I'm rewriting my scripts to combine locations so that I don't have company moves, because those moves usually take half a day. And I basically lost half of a shooting day, which is a lot. So that's the second thing I do, which does not change at all my production quality, my story, my anything. It's all the same. So those two things are the first things I do. If that doesn't give me enough, I'll try to squeeze people on location fees, because that also is something that doesn't really affect my production, how do you say, quality. So basically go start negotiating. And then I do the same with the talent. I'll ask them, can you do this for a little less, maybe, please? So I beg, I go on my knees, I do whatever needs to be done. So, and then if the talent doesn't want to do it, then I have a deferment conversation with them as well. I tell them, can you please defer at least some of your salary, and then I'll give you a premium, and you're gonna get more back-end points. These are the kind of conversation I do if the first, steps don't get me where I need to be. And then what I do with the bond company to get to deferments and exclusions, deferments you have to talk to the bond company about to make sure that they're okay with what you're doing. They want to make sure that the post-production and the visual effects agreement is not affected in any way by you doing a different deal with them. So they will have to approve these deferments. What they do though, they charge you a fee on the budget. So when I look at my budget and I look at very carefully, I look at what exactly do I actually need to have insured. I don't need my fees to be insured because I control them. I don't need my lawyer to be insured because I control them. The rights fees and everything that's related to development is usually paid on the first day. Doesn't need to be insured. The project is still insured for chain of title, so that doesn't go away. But the fees itself, they're paid on the first day because they're called first day payments. They don't need to be insured. All my admin cost, that is stuff that I control, like offices and some stupid nonsense like that. So everything that's kind of under my control that I have to pay, that I know I don't need an insurance for, I take that out. So these are exclusions. I take my music budget out often too, because it's paid for by the music investor in most of my projects. So these things reduce the budget to a strike price budget. So there is the proper production budget and the strike price budget, which is called a bonded strike price budget, that is being bonded by the completion bond, and that's being insured. Sometimes I get to reduce at least, I would say, around 20% this way, 20 to 30 sometimes even. I squeeze everything and I move everything, and I make sure that, so that means that my bond fee, which can be anywhere between 2 and 3% just for the completion bond, and then there's a COVID bond, and then everything that's driven by the budget, I'm trying to reduce the budget for that bonded fee so I can save money there. So this can also be a place where you save money without losing any of your production quality elements. Any questions on this? So here I put a list together of all the areas that I just mentioned and some more. Obviously, you're going to get this PDF later, this PowerPoint, so you have this. And
Jeanette, I have a question.
Yes,
Excuse
Kathy.
me. For above the line people, you had talked about reducing the talent fees and, ways to trim the budget down.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working with A-list, like, we're working on our group project now, and I'm trying to find a way to find some round figures or ballpark figures for different levels of talent. Where would I find that information?
You don't. You have to call the agent. Okay, but here's the deal. For an A-list talent, what's the budget of your project? What are you thinking of budgeting this at?
We're trying to figure it out. We're in the very beginning stages.
So let me say it this way. If you have a budget that's around $5 million, your talent, if it's one role, is probably going to be around 2. Just to give you a relationship, because you want A-level, even though it's a small budget, you still want an A-level cast. It's going to be somewhere between 1 and 2 million, that is. So this talent is going to be the highest cost component that you have. I mean, I've had budgets where I had 50% go to talent. I'm not kidding. So my last, when I did the Halle Berry movie, I think Halle Berry, I think I paid her $5 million, and the budget was, I think, like 18 or something. Well, it's not half, but there were other people in there too. So it really, I mean, I always try to just do one A-level talent. Everyone else is cast, and they're usually paid scale because, I can't afford to pay more at that point. So I only have one name, and that's why I spend my money. So I would say when you do your project, just do one A-level name and assume that they're going to be about 25% of your budget. I think that's a safe number for you. And then you can go with that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to say something else. I know I lost my train of thought. No. Okay. It'll come back. So as you see, when you do these case studies, you have two events going on. You have the funding event and you have the recoupment event. And they're kind of separate because they happen at separate times and they play by separate rules. The funding event is the time where you basically put everything together. You develop your project, you're looking at your funding sources, you try to put them all together, you try to mesh them up, you try to negotiate them to the best you can and so that they all fit. So this is kind of the time where you do your pre-sales, you do your bank loan, you lock in your equity, you lock in your tax incentive loan. You always do a tax incentive loan, always. You go to Maritere and shoot in Puerto Rico. Anyway, so you always do that. I had someone yesterday who I spoke to who is shooting something in Georgia. Seems like that's up and going again. So it was a little shaky for a time. So there are some great incentives in this country, and there are great incentives outside of this country. I'm going to have a whole section on with you in the future module on what happens where and how we get that money. But for now, just know that it has to be part of your finance plan. So you're putting your finance plan together similar to how you have done it. Now the recoupment is a different side of the coin because the recoupment happens after you did everything. Movie is finished or TV show is finished and it's now being distributed as a finished product. Screenings, people send pilots around, all the stuff happens and people are now looking at the finished product. What you're obviously hoping for at that time is that the sales agent will generate the sales that they have estimated for you. In the ideal world, of course, you want the ask price to come in. In the minimum world, you want the take price to come in and verify as he has quoted you. In the reality, it's going to probably be somewhere in the middle. It's going to probably be somewhere between take and ask what you're getting. So just know that that's kind of the reality. In our case, what we have done often in the case studies, we go by the take will come in. And then we had another case study where we say, okay, we do some pre-sales. There's some on the take level, some on the ask level, which also happens. And then we see how it all plays out for the take scenario and the ask scenario. So we did that already. What you have to remember is the pre-sales, once they're done, they're gone. They're no longer in your availability bucket, which is important for you to remember. Now, when you go to recoupment though, we are taking those as a part of our recoupment schedule because they're still being paid the 80% on. This is actually what's happening. You got the 20% down payment that you used and spent in the funding. But when you go to recoupment, you still are getting the 80%. Yes, you used the pre-sales and you got a loan for it, but you need to pay that loan back. So that's why you have the pre-sales also in your recoupment schedule, even though they happened before. So just to give an explanation as to why they're there. So there you sell everything, money comes in, and now you're paying everyone that's supposed to be paid. You pay your bank, including your interest, because you haven't paid them anything yet. They deducted the interest when they gave you the bank loan, but you didn't give them a check. Now is the time to pay them. Now you're paying the interest fees, or you're paying the premiums and the interest for the mezzanine, and you're paying the premium for the equity. So all the costs associated with the financing that you've put together in the funding period is now applicable. Now is when you have to pay this. And you're paying all these costs and expenses. For a theatrical movie, what you need to know, and we're going to learn about this as well, is that the P&A is going to be deducted first from usually only the region that the P&A is for. So let's say you do a movie, and it's released on 100 screens or 1,000 screens, it doesn't really matter how many screens, in the US. and you have a P&A investor, it doesn't even matter if it's a P&A investor, if the studio pays for it, it doesn't matter who pays for it in the end of the day, but it is recouped from the territory revenues, from the box office first, and then from any other revenue that it's generated in that territory, meaning in the US. What you need to avoid is a deal with the P&A investor where the P&A investor says, if I don't make enough money in the US, I want to be recouping out of international too. Ideally, you want to avoid that. Doesn't always work, but you do want to avoid that, because if they paddle in and recoup from the international, your equity investor is going to be affected and your bank loan is going to be affected, and the bank will not like that. The bank will say to you, I don't care about your P&A in international. I want my money back first. I don't care. I do not care. So you have to be very sensitive to that information or to the structure of the P&A deal so you don't affect your bank loan. So just keep in mind, keep them very ring-fenced to the territory, and just know you have to pay them back from that territory. And banks usually know, so they understand, but banks usually don't take the US as a value either. They usually value the US at 0 because it's such a volatile market. So they always work with international sales estimates anyway, don't even look at the US. So for the US, if the P&A investor has to recoup, you're fine. But if the P&A investor dabbles into the correct collateral pool of the bank, there's going to be a problem. So just, keep that in mind for the waterfall, which we'll talk about in a minute, for a theatrical movie. Any questions on this? Oh, good. Moving on. We talked, here's back to Cheryl, the guilds. The guilds have different ways of working with you on your projects. You have the possibility to, when you have lower budgeted projects, you don't, Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have to pay a guild bond, which is basically a bond that secures the members, meaning your crew, to be actually paid by you. So the guild asks you, give me money up front and make sure that I'm just using that money to make sure that your people are getting paid. That's what a guild bond does. It's not required all the time for all the budgets. As Cheryl mentioned in the interview, you are basically required to pay it for anything above level 3, which I think was above 2.5 million, right, Cheryl?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's correct. And just to backtrack a little bit,
Yeah.
Lower budgets don't have to pay a residual reserve bond, but there's always going to be a small payroll bond for the
there is a payroll bond?
Yeah.
So don't listen to me.
Usually 1 or 2 weeks salary.
Okay, so there is a bond for a slope. So there you go. See what I know, nothing. I've only paid, I think I've only paid a bond once. So why didn't I pay it for my other moves? Or maybe you like me, who knows? So, but I did pay a huge bond for my very first movie, which was a $3.6 million movie. And I told Cheryl, I had a headache where I got a notification from the guild saying, we want $80,000. I'm what? So it was a bit scary at that moment. So just call the guild. First thing you do, make sure that you become a signatory with the production company that runs the production. So the production LLC, movie LLC, TV show LLC needs to be a signatory with the guild. They will then tell you how much money they want from you as a bond. They will. And then the residual reserve, Cheryl, is only applicable for level 3 then?
3 and above, yeah.
3 and above. Level 3 and above, any residual reserve calculation that you have to have needs to be also something that the guilds will tell you how much it is. And it's going to be for anything over 2.5 million or 2.6 million, something in that range, right?
Correct.
Thank you. So the first thing you do is you call the signatory office and tell them, I'm planning on doing this. What do I have to budget? So just so you know what numbers you need to deal with, and get yourself ready, and also make sure that you have the equity investor be informed about the fact that some residuals will be deducted. So residuals are usually applicable after the bank is paid. So mezzanine investor needs to know about it, equity investor need to know about it, because they're both going to be affected by whatever residual is coming up. Now there is a scenario where when you sell, or when the sales agent sells the movie to the distributor, I always try to get the distributor to assume residuals, to basically take over the responsibility to pay them, which many distributors do. So it doesn't hurt to ask. And because if they take over this responsibility, you don't have to put it in, I mean, you always have obviously the guilt in your karma agreement as a party, but they will make this payment to the guilds, and you don't have to, it doesn't have to come out of your waterfall, it comes from them. So make sure that you instruct the sales agent to require, ideally, these residuals to be taken over by the distributor. If they don't want to, then you have to deal with it. So that's something to just keep an eye on. Any questions on this? Okay, so here's what a funding and recoupment and profit schedule would look like. You have your production budget, of course, that's an expense. It's your, we call it the negative cost often. And then you have your distribution expenses, which could be anything from the marketing fee that you have to pay to the sales agent, to their sales fee, to their sales expenses. The marketing fee that you pay to the sales agent is not to be mixed up with P&A. What the sales agent does is they tell you, I need money to go to the markets, Film Fest in Berlin, Film Fest in Cannes, Toronto, Sundance, all the major markets. They have to pay the booth, they have to pay the hotel, they have to pay their staff, they want a trailer, they want a poster, they want to have a little press junket. All these things they want to do for you is what they're going to charge you for. Sometimes they have a little bit of a, like an event or something, and they also want to charge for that. It really depends on the project, but it is a good thing to know about it and to negotiate with it. So what I have paid, just to give you a range on my movies, so it's lower budgeted movies like the $3 million range, I think I've paid no more than $50,000. Higher budgeted after that, the highest I've paid in marketing fees to my sales agent was $150,000, and this is for a movie that's 25 million. This is a budgeted expense. So you add it to your marketing budget. This is not something that you pay up front. You don't ever pay the sales agent anything up front. Any sales agent that asks you for something up front, you need to be wary about. So this is going to be paid to the sales agent on closing. So they get this money. They're very happy about that. So now they can take your movie to the markets. That's coming out of the budget. What does not come out of the budget is obviously their sales fee and their expenses. Now we talked about a sales fee range. For a TV show, you're going to see sales fees of about 20 to 30%. I personally have never paid more than 25%. On a movie, depending on what the budget is, you're going to see sales fees anywhere from 15, sometimes even 12 to 35% if they give you a minimum guarantee. If a sales agent gives you a minimum guarantee, which is an advance for you, again, which is what they then will recoup from sales they make, the sales fee is likely going to be higher. If they don't give you an advance, you should be anywhere between 15 and 25%, depending on what your budget is. So just so you have a range, if the sales agent gives you an advance, you want to talk to them about saying, if you give me an advance and you're charging me 35%, I'd like to pay the 35% during the time that you're recouping your advance. After that, I'd like to be dropped down to the regular 20, 25%, whatever the deal is that you make with them. That's a conversation you can have with them, and I've seen that, I've done that. So this is kind of normal to do. If they get a little squirmy, you can, decide, but this is a very reasonable conversation to be had. So these are kind of your expenses. On the funding side, you're going to have the sales agent do your pre-sales. So he's now taking the estimates and he picks out territories that he's now actually selling. Again, the pre-sale is a regular sale. It's a regular distribution agreement like a normal sale would be. There's no difference. The only difference is it happens before you're actually producing the movie or the show. That's the only difference. A sale is done after it's finished. The pre-sale is done before it's done. Same, contract looks the same. So these pre-sales, as you know, you take the contract to the bank and then the bank will give you a loan for it. Now the banks are a little stickly about these things. They will take the contract and they will value them depending on who the distributor is and where it's coming from. So you can have a tier 1 territory distributor. Tier 1 means all the territories that are strong. Europe, some territories in Asia, Australia, Canada. These are tier 1, very strong territories where the distributor, where the bank says, we'll give you between 80 to 100% on these. But here's what can happen. There is a German distributor. Germany is a strong distributor, between 90 and 100% cash flow. And then the distributor might be someone that A, the bank doesn't know, has never worked with, or doesn't pay on time. And the bank knows this because the banks know all the distributors and they know exactly when they're paying and they know exactly who's late. So even in a strong territory, you have to make sure that the distributor that you sold to is actually someone the bank will cash flow a high number for. So what happens with those pre-sales is the bank will look at them, where they're coming from, and schedule them as a tier 1 or tier 2 territory, which, by the way, they will all write down in a term sheet for you. This is not going to be a secret, and it's not going to be something they do behind the door. You're going to get a term sheet that says, here's what we're doing and here's why we're doing it. And they're going to say exactly how much the percentage is that they're giving you for each contract. So tier 2 are territories that are maybe economically challenged or that are known to never pay or pay late. The bank knows this too. So they say, I'm not so sure about this Israeli distributor. I'm just going to give you 50% of this. Or I'm not so sure about this, you know, distributor in Turkey. I'm just making this up. I don't want to be racist here. Because we don't know them. We've never worked with them. I actually, when I did the Halle Berry movie, had a French distributor who was a new distributor. And he pre-bought the movie for actually a good price. And the bank says, yeah, we're not going to give you anything for this. And I'm like, what? 0? They gave me 0 because they didn't know the guy. So that can happen. It's very real. So just know that the discount they will apply is going to be part of your finance plan. So the finance plan will show, here are my pre-sales, here are their tiers, and here's how the bank will discount them. So for these contracts, I might get 80%. For the tier 2 contracts, I might get 50%. And that's how the pre-sale number for the loan is being calculated, right? The gap is a whole different story because for the gap, you don't have any contracts. You basically just have an assumption and hope that you sell those rights. And the bank says, we know the rights that you still have to sell because we have your pre-sales and we're deducting them from the bucket of all the rights you still have to sell. We're only going to give you 50% on these rights that you still have to sell because we don't know if you're ever going to sell them. We're not going to take the risk. So this is where the gap is based on. But the gap is also based on who your sales agent is. So if they have a sales agent that they're very comfortable with, they will give you likely up to 20% of your budget. If they have a sales agent where they're like, yeah, we don't know, it goes down to 10. If they have a sales agent that they're really, you know, they're like, it's going to go down to 0. So it really is important for you to figure out early enough what the bank will give you. And you can ask them flat out, I'm doing this movie, I have these pre-sales, I'm thinking of using XYZ as a sales company. I think there's actually a company that's called XYZ. Anyway, I don't want to, you know, don't want to talk bad about someone. Anyway, so they'll say, we've never heard of them, we don't know, or, you know, they're new, or, you know, we are not so sure, we're not gonna give you a gap on this. So just know to ask the bank in advance so that you can have that conversation with them early on. Mezzanine, pre-sale loan we talked about. The mezzanine is also like a super gap. So there are companies that do the gap and the super gap. So they're basically adding like 5 to 10% on your gap loan. They are basically your bank. This is not a bank. This is like a bank-like lender. In essence, it's an equity fund that's using the money for a loan, for a gap loan and a super gap loan. And there are many equity firms out there that actually do this. I work with equity firms and all they do is senior lending. So even though it's an equity firm and I should be getting equity, they're only giving me a loan and they're charging me an interest. So you have to be aware of these companies and their practices as well, but you also need to know, you know, where can I plug them in? So I can kind of differentiate between the kind of financing sources that I have. So if it's an equity loan that gives you a gap loan and a mezzanine loan, for you, they become automatically senior lender and mezzanine lenders. So you don't even care where the money is coming from. You structure them like you would structure the bank loan. And then you can still have an equity loan on top of it. Maybe even from the same company sometimes, or maybe it's a different entity and it's a different investor. So just know that you have to name the babies in order to structure them properly in your finance plan. It doesn't matter where the money comes from. What matters is how the money is plugged in and what deal you're striking with them. So the equity is obviously your friend and it is the one that you're going to go for first. And the equity does not deduct any money. It's just going to be charging you a premium. In-kind services could be anything from the music investor that we talked about that finances your music budget and is recouping from residuals. So therefore, you don't really care about the distribution revenue here because they're not participating in your distribution revenues. They're only participating in music royalties. And then you have the VFX and post companies that give you what we call an investment, because it's basically them saying you don't have to pay this now, you pay this later, and that's why we're charging you a premium. It's a little bit like an investment because they're basically giving you money for the funding period of it because you're not having to pay this. But it is theoretically not an investment, it's a deferment. But it's treated like an investment because it's going to have a premium, but it is structured in a way that it moves around in the waterfall. Deferments can be in different places. When I talk to my equity investors, I usually say to them, a deferment is part of a production, is a production expense. And as an equity investor, you know that the production expenses are going to have to be recouped before you can make your money back. So I push the deferments in front of the equity, but I make sure that the equity understands that, because I want my people that give me the money and make this happen not to wait until the equity is paid and never may potentially see it. Hopefully they will, but you don't know. So I push it in front of the equity in many cases. Here, it's behind the equity because that's the worst case scenario. If the equity investor says, I don't want these people in front of me, I don't, then the worst case scenario is this. Just know that some of these elements can move around. Tax incentives, we know we don't have to recoup, so they're not part of the waterfall. Brand integration, you're providing a service for by integrating a brand. They're not in your waterfall. Crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, same thing, they're not in your waterfall. So when you look at the waterfall here, you have the bank, you have the mezzanine lender, you have the premium equity deferments. By the way, if we put the gilts in here, they would be right after the bank, right? I'm just making a simple waterfall here, just so you know. It starts with revenue coming in from the distribution rights and all the ancillary rights, maybe merchandising, et cetera, and then it goes down to this. Now, what you need to know for brand integration is that not every brand company will pay you the money all up front. So what can happen is that they give you half up front and half moves into this revenue category here. So it would also have brand integration in here. And then you just pay everyone. Step 3 is you're not paying them in a waterfall like one after the other, after the other, after the other. Here you pay everyone at the same time based on the profit participation that they have. So whoever has profit participation, whoever gets a piece of the 100% cake will now be paid. Could be your, obviously it's your financiers, could sometimes even people that have crowdfunding sites. Some of the crowdfunding people want a little back end profit participation. Obviously your talent, director, writer would want something for sure. And then the producers definitely want something because you guys want to get paid and your producing partner too. So this kind of structure happens at the same time. So when we look at this on a situation where we have a P&A investment in a theatrical movie, we have actually the gilts are up here. I put the gilts in front of the bank. Yay. Usually they go down here, but sometimes, who knows. P&A goes first, premium. Collection agent comes next because they need to get paid. The gilts usually become after the senior loan. So here's the thing with the sales agent. The sales agent is worth a conversation depending on who gives you the senior loan. Not every senior lender requires that the sales agent is paid after the senior loan is paid. So there are lending companies that say, we're okay with the sales agent recouping before us. But it really is something you need to ask the lender. Make sure that they understand where they want to be recouping, and then make sure the sales agent is okay with that. Most sales agents are fine recouping behind the senior loan, but some say, you know what, we don't want to. And then obviously you have to potentially find a different sales agent. Then you do your mezzanine, your super gap, plus the interest, and interest is obviously already in there when you put the principal back, and the premium, you do the equity, then you do the deferments, and we mentioned the deferments can be in front of the equity, and then we do profit participation. Now this waterfall is handled not by you. You don't have to worry about it. You can theoretically forget about this. You don't even need to know. It's all in the CAMA agreement. The CAMA agreement is the collection agent management agreement that the collection agent will generate for you. You don't even have to draft this. All you tell them is say, dear Gadi, you have Gadi on, he's a guest speaker for us. So you can call him and say, Jeanette told me to ask you. He gave us the CAMA examples, which I have in the module. So you basically call up Gadi and say, okay, here's the deal. I got this equity guy, I got this sales agent, I got these pre-sales, I have these guilds, I have all these people giving me money, I have these profit participations, I have these deferments, figure it out. So Gadi then goes and puts them all in the comma, depending on what the contractual obligations say. So he really reads your contracts, and then he generates the waterfall for you, and then he pays them all. Whenever money comes in, trickle, 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 people get paid a little bit, paid a little bit, paid a little bit. And everyone gets a report that says, here's how much money has trickled in, here's how much what everyone gets paid at this point. And it continues because you get more money coming in, so it continues and people are getting paid continuously. So it's not like in our case, for example, when we do the case studies, we have everything coming at the time we do the recoupment structure. Obviously, we're only doing the recoupment structure to have our business plan done. But the reality is it's going to probably take 2 to 3 years for all this money to come in. Just keep that in mind when you talk to an investor. Don't promise them any money back before 3 years. It is not realistic. Okay? It's probably okay with a strong project that, you know, it's going to come in 2, but you want to be safe. Just give yourself an extra year and say it's not going to come in for 3 years. The end of story. They obviously want to ask you, when do I see my money back? So you need to know this. So the comma is going to be active the entire time. It's going to be active for the life of your movie or your TV show. It's going to always be there. And everyone who is in your deal will always get a report. In the beginning, they get a lot of reports because in the beginning, a lot of money is coming in. Most rights are sold within the first 6, I would say like 9 to 12 months. And then it gets trickle, trickle. So then comma reports come in every quarter, and then they come in, you know, maybe every 6 months. So it really depends on what's happening and when money is coming in. But the comma account will be there always, as long as you have this IP. Here are the different funding sources and what they entail. Yeah, ask.
Is it common for a sales agent to want to be above the guilds and the comma fee in a waterfall?
No. It usually is, you need to move, well, it's not, it all depends, but normally the sales agent recoups after the guilds and after the senior loan. But I've done it in, you know, different ways. Sometimes if I have, if I sell everything to a distributor who assumes all the residuals, I don't need to worry about it. You know, there's nothing in my waterfall. But that's why the waterfalls, they move around a little bit depending on what deals you do. So it's not like written in black and white. When the collection agent sees your distribution deals, and they work with the guilds too, they know exactly where to plug those people in. I have them always do it. I'm giving you a basic layout, but I want you to understand that things can slightly shift. The only thing that does not shift is when the investors are recouping. The senior loan will always want to be in first position. The mezzanine is always after the senior loan. The equity is always after the mezzanine. These basic structures is what I need you to understand. All the other stuff, you can slightly move around depending on what the deals are that you're doing. But the basic structure is this. So just keep in mind that's what you're dealing with. Because when you talk to your investor, which is the whole point of putting this business plan together, they need to understand where they're sitting in the waterfall. They just need to know. So for them, you say, equity investor, you're going to have to potentially deal with residuals. You're definitely going to deal with the sales agent charging money. You're definitely going to deal with the senior loan and potentially a mezzanine loan being in front of you. You're going to have to probably deal with some deferments in front of you. And what am I missing? P&A. So important is your conversation with your equity investor, because that's the person that you need first in order to make everything happen. That's the person we're focusing on if we put everything together. These are the people we need to excite. Otherwise, it's really not relevant, because the other option is you sell it to a network and they pay everything. You sell it to a studio and they pay everything. That's your other situation. But if we're talking about independent financing, everything starts with the equity investor. So that's really the conversation that you need to know how to have with them. And the worst case scenario is these structures will appear to you, equity investor, in front of you, so that they understand that. So when you do your finance plan, that's what that's going to show. You have everyone recouping in front. And for the equity investor, it doesn't really matter, you know, does deferments, well, it does deferment recoup before mezzanine or after? I mean, sometimes I even push it in front of the mezzanine if the mezzanine lender lets me do it. The equity investor, at that point, they don't care if the waterfall ranking before them changes around. I just want you to know that some of these things can change around, and they're really relying on the contracts that you do, which, you know, can be varied terms. So the safest thing for you to do is know what the equity investor has to deal with in front of their recoupment, and hand over everything to the collection agent so they can put your waterfall together, depending on what the contract is that you have closed. Yeah. So when we look at pre-sale agreements, we usually deal with a 10 to 20% down payment that is applied on closing. You should insist that your sales agent does require a down payment. Obviously, you know, when distributors buy rights, they ideally don't want to pay anything, but we need to have them have a little skin in the game so that we feel comfortable. The bank would want to see that too, because they want to know that whoever they are banking later for the contract does have some skin in the game. So it's really important for you to push that a little. The balance of 80% or 90% is due when the sales agent sends out what is called a notice of delivery, telling the distributor, we are about to deliver all these elements to you, we need you to pay the balance. You don't want to send everything to the distributor before you have the money. Not a good idea. So you're basically just sending out the notice, I'm ready to deliver to you now, I'm ready to deliver per the delivery elements that you're requiring, but I need you to pay. So that's something that is going to happen. The bank will also call something that is called a notice of assignment, which basically says that the distributor is going to pay them instead of you. So the notice of assignment is something the bank will draft. You don't have to worry about it, but you have to get that signed by all the distributors that gave you a pre-sale. That's important for your bond closing. So that's something the sales agent is going to have to realize for you and get ready, signed with the distribution agreement that they say. Now, if it's a theatrical movie, let's say, usually you get a minimum guarantee. So let's say you have a theatrical movie, you're going to release in the US on 1,000 screens. So it's a solid movie, right? And then you sell it to Germany and you sell it for $1 million and they pay $1 million minimum guarantee. So now the movie goes out in Germany and they pay obviously their P&A there, they have their expenses, they have everything, they paid you the minimum guarantee, and they make a lot of money in the box office. If they make no money in the box office and this movie tanks in Germany, you don't care because you already made your minimum guarantee. So there's no box office risk for you. And that's also something you need to make sure the investor understands. Your investor does not carry box office risk unless he's a P&A investor, and then he does. But your regular equity investor will appreciate this because the box office conversation is always a tricky one where they say, well, how do we know how much this thing makes in box office? No one knows. It's a crystal ball conversation. Who wants to have that? No one. So let them know that you don't have any box office risk with your finance structure. Here's what happens. If Germany makes a lot of money in the box office, and they pay their P&A back to the German distributor, they have a distribution fee that the German distributor charges, they might have some expenses that they charge, and then they deduct the MG that they paid you, and then what is left, they share 50-50 with you. That's called overages. So you will participate when the movie actually does perform well in the territory, but you will not have to deal with box office disasters, for lack of a better word. So when you do a split rights deal, which is basically a deal with the network or studio where they keep the US rights in perpetuity, meaning forever, they're gone. That means all you have left is the foreign rights. So in this case, you will likely get a license fee that might be a little higher than a regular sale to the US. So I have done split rights deals anywhere from 35% to 75% of the budget, where the US kept the rights. So I don't participate in any US revenues anymore. They keep everything from theatrical revenues to VOD, SVOD, online, television, all the revenue streams that they have from the US, they keep. I don't get anything, but I also get a higher license fee. But then I get to recoup everything from international. When you do a split rights deal, many times, you can have a conversation with whoever does it to pay upon a payment schedule, like they would do if they would do the production. So they would then sometimes not require for you to get this deal banked with the bank. So if you do a deal, let's say with, I don't know, any studio, Lionsgate, for example, and they say we're going to do this as a split rights deal, which is also a little bit like a co-production. And then you say, well, this is my production cash flow plan. Here's how I need the money. They might just say, okay, we release the money in these same installments. But it could also be that they say, we're buying the US and we're buying it as a split rights deal, but we're giving you a contract and we're not paying anything, or we're just paying a regular down payment, or we're not paying anything, you need to take it to the bank. In that case, you take it to the bank and the bank will cash flow this very likely up to 100%. I mean, obviously you pay interest on it, but they will cash flow this. The international, same thing applies here that you have with any other situation in any other case study. When you have a distributor that buys everything, which is an all rights deal or a pickup deal, they will, you know, like someone says, we love your idea, we'll pay for everything, you don't need to bother with equity investors. They will then pay based on an agreed production cash flow plan. However, I've had situations where I sold it and they said, well, we're not paying anything, you have to go bank it. So what did I do in this situation? I added the cost of the interest that I have to pay to my budget to make sure that I actually can pay for it. And then went and got the deal banked by a bank. So you can still do it, and both applies. You know, you can have, we had a situation with, who did we talk to? I think it was Crackle, was it Crackle? I don't remember. Where they bought a show from us and they didn't want to pay the cash. So they basically said, we need you to take this to the bank and then you get the money and we'll pay when you deliver. Or in this case, they even said, we'll pay when we air, which is a whole different thing. Anyway, so there are different situations. You just need to know that even with a pickup deal, you might have to deal with the bank and you might have to deal with the completion bond and you might have to deal with everything that comes with it. Sometimes when you do a show for, let's say, Netflix and they just buy it, they don't necessarily require a completion bond. It's a beautiful thing because completion bonds can be a bit of a pain in the butt, but it really depends on who it is. So if they pay for things and they're okay with dealing with overages and they take the risk for overages, you're fine. I've done a show with Discovery, which I did not do did a completion bond with, because I thought, it's gonna be easy enough. And guess what? I went over budget. Not much, but a little. And I had to pay for it because Discovery was like, we don't care. We're not taking the risk. So there are deals that you do with network stations where they will flat up say, this is the budget, that's all what we pay. And if you go over budget, your problem. So it's then your decision if you want to do a completion bond or not. If you work with an investor or a bank, you will likely need one. If you handle it on your own or you have an investor that doesn't require a bond or a distributor that doesn't require it, then you get away without it. Just figure out who's going to come up with the money that's still needed if there is an overage, if you go over budget. So that's something you need to address early on. In this case, I was the idiot that had to pay for it. Now, when we do bank financing, we talked about the fact that we have tier 1, tier 2 territories. There's no terrorists. We don't bank those territories. And we are dealing with discounting that is applied by the banks depending on what country it is. Is it a good territory, tier 1? Is it a challenged territory, tier 2? Tier 2 territories can be discounted to 0 to 50%. So it can very well be that you don't get anything for this contract. It can be that you get half for this contract. Tier 1 is usually between 80 and 100% of the contractual amount that is stated as a minimum guarantee in the distribution agreement. The bank will sometimes charge loan fees in addition to an interest. The interest is driven by the LIBOR rates, which are rates obviously that are established by the banking system, for lack of a better word. It's more complicated than that, but just know it's established by the banking system. So what the term sheet will probably say, we're going to charge you this many points above labor, or this percentage above labor. So what that translates to, they take the labor rate, which kind of moves around, and then they add whatever they want on top of it. I have paid interest anywhere from, for a pre-sale loan, anywhere from, I want to say 4 to like 6%. And I have paid interest for gap anywhere from 6 to 15% if it was a non-bank, if it was a bank-like institution that's not a bank. So it really depends on where you go, and these interest rates are usually charged per year. So you have to look at them, okay, going, okay, how much, what is it, 4% per year? So if we do a 2-year term, it's 8%. So these things will obviously be in your term sheet. The loan fee is usually a smaller fee. It depends on, you know, what the transaction amount is, what the loan amount is, but I don't think I've ever paid more than like $20,000. The legal fee is something that the bank will charge you for a lawyer that you both pick. So the bank wants a lawyer that they know understands their side of the coin, no pun intended. So they want someone who's done bank closings before, and that obviously is what you want. So they'll come up with some suggestions, and then you can pick and choose and negotiate. That lawyer can be anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000, depending on who it is, you know, and depending on what the budget is and the transaction size. I'm just giving you some ranges of what I have paid for this guy. The gap loan, again, is collateralized by 200% of your sales, your unsold territories, and it's 50% of that. It's very much driven by who the sales agent is. And the gap loan will also not be available to you if you don't have pre-sales. So you have to make sure that you have at least 3 pre-sales in order for you to be able to get a bank loan. So that's why these pre-sales are kind of important, because a gap loan is great. It's much cheaper than equity, and you know, it's good for you to have. Now here's the thing. If the equity investor decides, and I'm going to actually go to the next slide, decides, I'm giving you, instead of the 35% that I would pay normally, I'll give you the gap loan. So I'm now increasing my investment to 55%, which would be fine. The only thing you have to know about that is you're going to have to now pay 20% on 55%. And your profit participation is obviously going up because the relation to the budget is 55% and not 35%. I would always say less headache, just do it. The risk profile for the equity investor doesn't change because he would have had to recoup behind the bank anyway. He's now making more money and there's no one in front of him, and you can tell him, if you do this, you're recouping in first position. Many equity investors like this. So feel free to have that kind of conversation with them and say, you have 2 options. You can either give me 55% or you can give me 35%. Here's what that entails, each of those. I would always ask for more in the beginning, and then you can always work your way backwards. I would give them those options because you also have to respond to what the equity investor's appetite is and what their risk profile is. But I would, you know, ask for it, because it doesn't do, it's not, yes, of course you pay more premium, but in the end of the day, it's less headache, and it's a nicer, warmer, fuzzier feeling if you just have it all with one person that you're basically partnering up with. Sometimes equity investors charge an executive producer fee. They usually have an EP credit or co-EP credit. When it's a TV show, it's a co-EP credit. When it's a film, it could be a co-EP or EP credit, depending on what it is. And sometimes they charge a fee for that. So they say to you, I need you to pay me upfront an EP fee of, I don't know, 150,000. So you would obviously deduct this from the money that they give you, because you haven't really budgeted it unless you want to budget it. But in most cases, you don't know. So you're likely not budgeting it. So you're going to have to deal with the fact that the equity investors basically paying for themselves, but the money that you get to use deducts this kind of fee. With the equity, there is no term. Like with the bank, you have a term, 2 years. With the mezzanine lender, you have a term, it's probably somewhere around 5 years. But with the equity investor, you don't have a term. You have milestones that you agree with them in an investment agreement that say, we hopefully get the money in 3 years. It might take 4 years, maximum 5 years. So that's kind of the terms that you put with an equity investor. But obviously with the equity investor, you also put in the contract that you don't give any representation and warranties as to how much money is coming back, if anything comes back, and when it's coming back. You have to put a liability limitation in all your contracts. And equity knows this. They know this is a high risk investment. And when you tell them, obviously you could lose all your money because this is Hollywood after all, they know this. So it's not really scaring them if the finance plan is solid. If they see this is a solid project and they like this kind of space and they believe in your content and they see you have pre-sales and they see you have good sales estimates, they'll be okay with that. Or they see you planning on doing pre-sales before they plug their money in. The gap loan, the super gap loan will require a longer term, or will allow you to have a longer term to return the money. And they also sometimes charge an executive producer fee and want an executive producer credit. In this case, again, I would try to limit this to a co-EP credit, not an executive producer credit if you can. Don't ever give them an executive producer credit for a TV show. That should be an absolute no-go, because that's not what an executive producer does for television. There, the executive producer is the highest credit, and it's usually the showrunner. Don't give that away. Say no. No, 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 no. Executive producer for film, fine. You can give that away, who cares? Co-EP, always a possibility for both. So just remember where these mezzanine lenders sit. They sit between the senior loan and the equity loan. What I call free money is all the money that you're not paying back. So obviously we're talking about tax incentives and tax rebates in the US. Here we're always going to hire an incentive lender to take our headache away, to have to deal with actually dealing with the credit when we're done, you know, dealing with the tax region, saying, here's my tax return, please give me this money. Who needs this headache? You're going to just get it from the tax incentive lender. You're going to pay anywhere between 5 and 25% as a fee, which is really driven by the region. If it is a solid region, the fee will go down. If it's a questionable region where there's a lot of changes happening, the fee will go up. So it really depends on what the tax incentive lender feels like this region warrants for them. So they will tell you exactly what their fee is. Sometimes in addition, they'll charge an executive producer fee. I'm calling it an executive producer fee, but obviously the credit will not be executive producer for a TV show, and it will also likely not be executive producer for a film. It will be co-executive producer, likely for both. Now, when it comes to international subsidies, it's a little different. There, you have the option of the international region cash flowing the credit themselves. Many regions do this. They cash flow in accordance with the bonded production cash flow plan. So there is no need for you to cash flow this with an incentive lender. It's given to you while you are producing. This is the case with many of the European incentives. And so you don't have to worry about anything being deducted. However, there is something that's being deducted because you're going to need a local producer to access these funding sources, and that local producer is probably going to charge you a fee. I've never paid more than 5%, but maybe they're a little more gougy these days, who knows. But just this is kind of the level that you would pay. Just keep that in mind. Brand integration, sponsorship, and so forth, again, is just a free money source for you because you're applying a service for them. Music royalty is free, crowdfunding and sourcing is free, and the in-kind services deferments, I call them free because at the time of funding, you don't pay them. Of course, you pay them later, but right now you don't have to. When you do production incentives, remember that you don't want the incentive lender to recoup from distribution revenues in case they cannot recoup from the region that they're contracting with. It is not your problem when the region changes the laws. It is not your problem when the region collapses. You paid for them to take over the risk. That's why you pay that fee. So when they insist on being in the CAMA agreement somewhere to recouping from something, the answer is no, because it's not industry standard. International subsidies, there are some countries that say, we want our money back, like Germany, greedy little effers. But here's what's happening in Germany. For example, they call it I'm going to give you the German word, bedingt rückzahlbares Darlehen, which basically means in English, you pay it back if you have it. So let's look at our waterfall. In this case, Germany would ask you, and this is only for the grant portion, not for the tax credit. Let me differentiate that. In many European countries, you have a general tax credit like you have here, 20%, 25%, and it's paid based on what you're spending there. You get that no matter what. You don't care, you get it, you shoot there, you get it. Now, the additional money that you can get is a grant. That grant is subject to a committee that decides how much money you get from the grant. And in many cases, you do get both. Now, the grant is bedingt rückzahlbar, meaning if you get money from Germany and it's a grant of $1 million, and you make a lot of money with your movie, you had, you have like box office, it's great, it's great, it's great. Now you pay back your loan, your mezzanine lender, if you have one, your equity lender, your premium. You pay back all your deferments. You pay back all your profit participations, and you pay yourself a profit participation. If you have money left at that time, that's when you pay the German grant. So it really sits in the end, just to keep that in mind. However, here's what happens. If you pay it back, it will sit in an account for you to be used for your next movie or for your next TV show. So it's really a great little bucket. It's a saving nest for you to have for the next project that you might be shooting there. So it's even in that case, I don't call it recoupable because it's not really recoupable. And I get to use it for my next project and I get on top of that, another grant and another subsidy. So that's how it works in some of the European regions. Just to keep in mind, the subsidies there work a little different. The other thing you need to know is you will always need a local producer. You have to have a local company to access international subsidies. I even use local companies when I access US subsidies because I don't want to deal with it. So I use usually a local co-producer when I go to Puerto Rico or when I go to Georgia or wherever I shoot. I use someone local to handle the shoot for me. So they have local people, blah, blah, blah. I take obviously my director and the head departments that I want. Sometimes I take them with me from LA. But in many times I just, hire someone locally to say, put the team together, let me know who it is, and make sure it's track record people on the team so we get a good look. I always kind of use a co-producer because it's less headache for me, but that's just me being lazy. You don't have to do that. Obviously, you can go to the territory. You can open up a company there. It's a local entity, and then you can produce your movie there. That's the way it's usually done. But if you don't want to do that, you can just hire a co-producer. For Europe, you will always need a co-producer simply because they have an established rapport with these grants and with these subsidy entities. So if you go there as an American producer and you open up a GmbH, which is what an LLC version in Germany is called, you're still kind of the new kid on the block, and they will probably frown on this. Germans are particular about this stuff. So are the French, so are the Italians, maybe the Spanish too, who knows. But I think it's much easier to just go and just use someone locally and have them do all the headachy stuff. Let me see. Yeah. For all of these and most of these, you're going to probably need a completion bond applicable. In-kind services, we talked about this, royalty-related music investment, crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, post-production deals, VFX deals, crew deals, all this stuff is in-kind, meaning it's something that you can defer. Brand integration, you always deal with an integration company where you talk to them about how can I include your brand in a way that is editorially integrated organically. So it's not like here's the Coke bottle in the front of the screen for 10 seconds, boring. No, you're going to talk about something where the character likes to drink Coke and the character is this and that, and it kind of works with the message that the brand wants. So there's a lot of character work that needs to be done. There is a lot of story work that needs to be done with the brand. So just know you're going to have to do a little bit of hand holding with your sponsors to make sure that they feel comfortable giving you all this money. It's worth this conversation because the money is free. And the fees that you're usually paying to the brand advertising companies are anywhere between, I've paid anywhere between 15 and 25% for actual placement agency. I call them placement agencies, but they're really integration agencies and advertising agencies. So just keep that in mind. So I have a little investor checklist here for you. I cannot tell you how many times it happened to me that someone offered me money and they didn't have it. Why? Do they just want to have lunch with me? Why? I'm not Halle Berry, I'm not pretty, I'm not an actress. Why? So I've never figured out the reason why people do this to this day. I don't know. But there are people that do this. You will have conversations with investors that say to you, oh my God, it's so amazing. I'm going to give you $1 million. Ask for proof of funds. I always ask for proof of funds early on. I know it sounds a little inquisitive, but I would say to them, oh my God, that's so great that you want to do it. So do you have the money? I mean, I'm not asking that direct, but I'm kind of direct. And then I have them send me a bank statement or maybe an investment portfolio statement. Here's what happened to me. The bank statement has some name on it that is not the name of the investor. Why? So I'm asking them, whose bank statement is? Oh, it's from my brother's sister's friend. Okay, then I would have to do a deal with your brother's sister's friend. Can we have a deal with that guy? Or give me your bank statement. You don't give me a bank statement from some dude that I don't know. It happened to me. No, I'm not kidding. Or I get a bank statement and it's with the name of the investor. I always call the bank. People don't think we do this, but we do this. And guess what? The bank doesn't even know the client. Happened. I'm not kidding. So this is Hollywood. This is pretty scary. So you'd actually have to call the bank and say, by the way, is this a client of yours? It's all you need to know. If they say, yes, this is a client, that's it. You can say, we're funding a movie. They send us this bank statements. I want to make sure that this is actually a client. So you have to have these things verified. And when it's a portfolio, usually when they have investment portfolios, there might not be under their name, they might be under the name of a company that they own. So let's say the investor has an investment company or whatnot. In that case, you have to ask for the registration paperwork. Registration paperwork doesn't show the investor's name in it. Why? So you do need a little digging and searching here, right? I'm hoping that this is not going to be too much digging or searching, but you have to do, unfortunately, your proper due diligence. You have to always, of course, accept the fact that the investor will also do due diligence on you. They're going to do a background check. So if you stole a car somewhere, not a great idea. Or if you something on your record, if you have bankruptcies. So there are a few things that are red flags for these guys. And obviously they're going to ask you, have you done this before? And in many cases, your answer is going to be like, no, I don't, but this guy that is in my team did or does. So you have to always combine forces with someone that can represent a track record that you may not have. It's just a given because investors are nervous about handing someone money who hasn't done this before. I mean, I wouldn't. So with me, it's different because if I finance something, I become the co-producer. So I'm the one, usually doing the work that I want the co-producer to do. But they're not me. They're usually just investment firms or investors, and they want to see someone with track record on there. So your job is always going to be with this content piece that you have to excite someone who would be doing this with you. They will do due diligence on the director because they want to check that the director didn't have any projects where they went over budget. The bond company, by the way, will do this too. They will be wanting, of course, to see your market valuation. These are the pre-sales, these are your sales estimates. You want to talk to an investor about the alignment of interest, which means the investor, as you know, recoups before you get your profit. You need to tell them this. You need to say, if you don't make money, I don't make money. You need to be paid off before I see a dime. And I'm not doing this for my measly producer fee. Given the fact that we're under such stress with our budgeting, we have to do tiny, tiny, tiny budgets in order to even be feasible. And our fees has to be small. Usually it's a fee that we don't even get out of bed for, and we have to do all this work for. So the producer fee is not really the way we make money on this. We make money with the profit. So we really believe that this content is going to make money. So we have to structure it in a way that we make money. And if we make money, the investor makes money. So if they understand this kind of structure, if they understand you have skin in the game, if you are really aligning your interests with them, they're going to be much more open. The fair investor and producer deal that I talk about is a deal that has to be industry standard. There are investors, I mentioned this before, that want higher profit participations, and they might even want higher premium. I've never really seen a premium more than 20%, but who knows? I don't know all the investors on the planet. So just know what a fair deal would look like. It is a 20% deal, and it's 50% profit participation of the investment related to the budget. And you might be asked to put a default clause in your agreement. I've never had to do this, but I have seen other producers having been asked to do that. And here's what that is. It basically says, if you don't pay me back by X, this amount of money, I get to take over your movie. It is not normal with equity investors, absolutely not. But, they might ask for something like this. The answer for you would usually be no, because the first security interest is anyway with the bank. Oh, Kathy has a cat. I love that. Look at the little baby. So cute. Sorry, I got distracted here. Don't put your pets on the screen and we get distracted. Anyway, so just know that this is kind of something you want to avoid. You can say to them, I can do a late payment. So if let's say, and we really don't want to do this, but if they push for default, anything default, you can say, I will not agree to anything, to any late payments before 5 years, because it's going to just take that long. If it takes longer than 5 years, we can add late payments onto the investment that it's supposed to be paid to you. So in addition to the premium, you're now going to get charged a late payment. Fine. If this is the worst case, this is the worst case. So that you can do because it is what it is. Many investors would want to define the line items in your budget as well as milestone and essential elements and agreements. An essential element for you, or material element for your investor, is your script and your attachments, because this is what values the project on the creative level. And then another essential and material element for them is your pre-sales and your sales estimates. if those change after you did a deal with them, so let's say you put together this beautiful finance plan that we're working on, and then you get to talk to your sales agent, and the sales agent says, well, this is a great finance plan, but it's not real. And you're like, holy shit, what do I do now? So you have to talk to the sales agent about how you get it to those numbers. And they will likely say to you, you have to put a different cast in. You might have to do a different cast, different director. We might have to change the script a little more to be a little more fast paced. So I can call this action drama rather than just drama. So there might be ways for you to up the value, and that's a conversation you have with the sales agent should this happen. So just be aware of these things being material for your investor if they change. The investors will look at the budget, not right in the beginning, but they will usually as an attachment if they are interested after they look at the pitch deck, ask for the budget. You want to kind of stay within the line items that you are describing there, not just for the investor, but also for the bond company. With the bond company, you can have a conversation that is such like, you know, we spend a lot more on the DP camera department because we had to shoot inside, we had to use more lights, so we had to do more rentals. But I think I'm going to be able to deduct it on location fee, meaning you can shift within the line items a little bit with the bond company, but you're going to have to talk about it with them. They're going to have to know this, and they will ask you, if you want to spend this money, where am I getting it from? You don't want it to be coming from your producer fee, so you want to save it in another department. And they will take it from your producer fees if it doesn't come from another department. Just know that. The investor might be similarly attributed, for lack of a better word. I have seen investors being this detailed. Usually it's not the case, but you do want to let them know that you can have absolute review over the line items in combination with the bond company. The bond company is looking over this because they are ensuring the on time and on budget production of my film or TV show. And you are welcome to sit next to them, for lack of a better word, virtually, and watching over this as it goes. So you can invite them to do this, and sometimes they feel very comfortable. You obviously want to tell your investor you have a completion bond. They're going to love it because that means for the investor there's no production risk applicable. You want to talk to the investor about their role. There are certain tax advantages for investors who have an active role. What that means is they have a right to decide with you. They have an approval right. And with that, they become not only potential headaches, but they have the option to deduct this invested amount from their taxable income, depending on the jurisdiction that they're coming from. So some investors might insist on this because they want to get a tax break. So what that means is that you're going to have them approve the script, you're going to have them approve all the material elements, and you have to do that in writing so that they can demonstrate it to your tax authorities. So you will tell them, obviously I want you to pre-approve everything in writing. So you pre-approve the script, you pre-approve the budget, you pre-approve the production cash flow schedule, you pre-approve the sales estimates, you pre-approve the sales agreement, you pre-approve the comma agreement. You have them pre-approve everything. So that way you're out of the headache. And then they have already, through that approval right with you, demonstrated that they have an active role because they have to approve all this. So this is going to be your workaround in not having to deal in a headache manner with them by having them pre-approve everything in the beginning. And then only if changes happen that change the value of the project, will you go back to them and say, I need you to now pre-approve this because we have a change here. That's something to remember. You will, as I just mentioned, talk to the investor about reducing, of the production risk by using a completion bond company. You will also hammer into their brains that you're using a collection agent, which will take over any accounting burden for anyone, and also ensures that all the revenues actually go where they're supposed to be going and that everyone gets paid the way they're supposed to be paying. I cannot tell you how many established producers, established 20 years, etc., are not using a collection agent. Ask me why, I don't know, but they're not. I had a student in my last class who took over a production, and now after the production was done and revenues are coming in, they're now putting a collection agent in place. Better late than never. So you can even do it later. If you're dealing with a production that you already started and you didn't do it in the beginning, just do it afterwards. There is no wrong time for this. In fact, you can do it at any time. I would do it for sure, and the investor is going to really appreciate it. For you and for the investor, it's important that you protect the master elements. Nowadays, obviously, we don't have a film print, so the master is not really a big, print that you have to keep cool in a special laboratory and all this stuff. Right now, it's all digital. You still want to make sure you have access to the digital masters. Sometimes they are with labs, sometimes they are on a cloud, sometimes they are with your editor because he edited it. You need to make sure that you have the master somewhere on a safe drive in your possession, so you can do delivery element deliveries in case you have to fire the sales agent and then you have to give all the delivery elements over to another sales agent. You have to have access to this. I usually apply an arbitration clause in my contracts just because arbitration in the US is so much cheaper in case of a legal dispute than a court claim would be. Court claims take years and they cost a lot of money. I mean, I have yet to see a legal claim that's less than $300,000. I mean, this is the low side. So no need to do this. Arbitration is cheaper and it usually goes faster. Do we have any questions about anything we discussed today? No question. Marion, go.
Like take for instance, I've been doing my videos and I noticed that certain people have taken the rights and they're using it like on Amazon. They're selling my books all over, but yet when I signed up with this one company to make my movie, that's what this whole dream was about, they had me sign something and I've learned from that. But I was just saying, is there anything that I could do since they're pretty much using the book and selling it without my rights?
Oh no, someone's selling your book without your rights? You need to,
Yes.
this is not good. How is that even possible? That's not good.
Amazon, I see it all over it. They're selling it for, the same price and they've never gone down on it. But
And hold on, are you getting any of the money? What? This is terrible. I think you have to, I mean, I would call Amazon and ask them or the seller. They usually list the seller on Amazon who sells, and you need to contact the seller and saying, why are you selling my book? You might have to,
Okay.
you might have to employ a lawyer on this, honestly, because this is serious.
You should look into who's printing those books as well.
Yeah, I know who the printer was, but they've been over in India. They sell the book all over. And I'm like, well, I don't know why I'm not getting any of the money. That's why I decided to go to college so I could kind of put a grip on stuff, and just see what are they doing.
This is terrible, Marilyn. Well,
I know.
I think it sounds to me like whoever is printing the books is going to be the source of evil here. Because
I know who they are. I know who they are.
You need to contact them and you need to say to them, you're not allowed to sell my book there, and you need to stop immediately. You need to take it down, and if they don't, you would have to contact a lawyer and have to send them a cease and desist or do something.
Okay.
For sure, because you're losing a lot of money. This is terrible. I am so sorry.
And they're waiting for the second and the third book to try to grab a hold of that, but I won't produce with them anymore.
Don't print it. I mean, I printed my book with Lulu, and Lulu is sending it to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and it's fine. I mean, the money goes to Lulu. Lulu sends it to me. That's okay. That's how it usually goes.
Okay.
So, and they're pretty easy. I mean, of course, they deduct their fees and whatnot, but they take care of everything. But they're very transparent about where they're selling and what they're selling and how much money they're making. So that's the kind of, and that's a U.S. company, I believe. That's the kind of press you want to work with.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll do that.
I'll give you information for them. But please,
okay.
And I can also give you a lawyer if you need one.
I do.
I'll send you the name of I have a killer litigator. My deals are all done by a litigator, because a litigator basically sues people or handles lawsuits all day long. So they know the holes so much better than a regular transactional lawyer would. I have made much better experience with a litigator. Okay. So I'll give you my guy's information.
That's one reason why I was scared to do any more books or movies, because I felt like they were just going to take everything from me anyway. So why do it?
Yeah, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. You did register the book on
yes, it's registered. And this lady, she was over in Venezuela somewhere, and her name, I know her and everything, but she just kind of wanted to hold on to the book after she saw what I had. And I had to tell her, this is all I have is my book. So she calmed down and she gave me everything, but it was a tug of war a little bit.
Did you register it with the Copyright Office?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so
And
you
the
have that.
guild, it was with the guild as well.
Good.
So
That's very good.
luckily, yeah. So I'm thankful for your class because it's really helping me a lot.
Yeah, and you just need to chill out a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, just relax a little. You're like, ah!
I know.
We're going to go through the case studies after this. You and me, we'll do them all together. Every single one of them.
Yes.
Okay.
Woo!
Yeah. So, and then I think,
you.
Victoria, you had a question, right?
Yes, I have two questions. Just honestly, if you could kind of go over two sections again.
Yes.
So if you could cover in-kind services, and then the second one that was the bank financing tiers. I just wasn't quite sure what those were.
Okay, so let's start with bank financing tiers. Bank financing tiers relate to the kind of distributor and country that you're pre-selling. For example, Germany, Italy, Spain, Australia, Canada, South Africa, New Zealand. These are all strong distributor countries, and they have strong distributors. This is a tier 1 example. These tier 1 territories, if you do a pre-sale in those territories, the bank will apply 80% discount max. In many cases, they give you 90 or 100% of whatever your distribution deal says for a license fee or a minimum guarantee. Both is the same. And then tier 2 are all the other territories where the bank is a little nervous, or a distributor that they don't know or doesn't really pay on time all the time. So tier 2 territories could be smaller territories sometimes, and they change all the time. We had the case recently where Greece became a tier 2 territory because of their economic challenges. So the tier 2 happens when a country is economically challenged or has a bad payment record, or the distributor that the bank deals with has a bad payment record or is unknown. These tier 2 territories are discounted by the bank when you do a pre-sale there by up to 50%. It could mean that you don't get anything for a contract, for a pre-sale contract, or you get up to 50%. Does that make sense, Victoria?
Yeah, it sounds kind of like credit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's that simple. Yeah. Okay.
So, what were the like strong distribution territories?
They change all the time, but I would say you're always safe to say it's Europe, it's the US, if you sell the US. It is Canada, it is Australia, New Zealand, some Asian territories like Japan. What else do I think of? The airline rights, Benelux. Some of the Russian territories, not all of them. I mean, the Eastern European territories. I mean, huh?
Would China be one?
No, China is tier 2 for sure. And the reason why China is tier 2 is because the piracy that happens there. That is a risk for the banks. And many people don't even sell to China for that very reason. I usually don't pre-sell China because I might as well kiss my movie goodbye. So I usually sell China last.
So many movies dependent on like Chinese box office.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the movies are actually depending on Chinese box office, because the Chinese box office, which is driven by the fact that there's so many billion people watching the movie, doesn't necessarily translate into payment for you. It translates into payment for the Chinese distributor, great, but that money doesn't necessarily make your way to you. And that's what China is notoriously known for. They're not very honest with their accounting, for lack of a better word, unfortunately. And it's very hard to audit them. It's nearly impossible. And therefore, the Chinese territory, if I do a pre-sale, I don't think I usually do it, because the piracy risk is so high, and them stealing rights, like happening to me, what happens to Maryland, if I give my movie to China. That's why I usually don't do the territories. So China is a territory you should sell last. Now, here's the thing. If you do a deal with a Chinese distributor directly, where they say to you, you know, we're gonna have you participate in box office. Okay, maybe they're going to be honest this time. I've yet to see that happen. So the problem with China is, yes, they make great box office and it's a fantastic country if you're in China and you're Chinese or you have a Chinese company or you are a Chinese distributor. Short of that, it's a little tricky, in my personal opinion and in my personal experience. Maybe there are some people that have great relationships with China that have a different point of view on this. My relationship with China has proven to be spotty, for lack of a better word. The second question that you asked was in-kind services. So in-kind services is basically anything that you have budgeted, right? You have a line item for it, but you're not paying it on closing because it's being deferred or it's being paid by someone else. For example, you have a music budget because you need a composer, you need a music editor, you probably license some songs, you probably need to do some scoring. You're going to have a music budget. And if the music investor says, I'm investing, they're usually paying for that budget. That is why that becomes an in-kind service, in essence. Also a music investment, it could be both. Now, if you have a DP and they say, I usually charge $1,700 a week or a day, it's usually a day, and I'm going to charge you half for this movie while we're doing the production, and I'm going to defer half of my salary to the recoupment, that means that half salary is an in-kind service that is being deferred. So in-kind service means it's a service you budgeted, but you do not have to pay at the time of your financial closing during the time that you're funding. Does that answer your question, Victoria?
So like if the, okay, so the DP says I'm going to charge $1,700 a day, but 50% of it's going to be deferred. So then was the other 50% trickled down to him?
Yeah, he's basically he's getting paid in the recoupment schedule. Usually when you have a DP on your payroll, he's going to get paid when he gets paid every week. Every Friday he gets a check, right? That's what usually happens during the production.
That would be paid in the deferment section of the recoupment schedule?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Would be deferments, correct. Was there someone else that had a question? I thought I saw another hand. No?
Could you also mention some other tier 2 territories that like you would sell to?
Why don't I do this, Victoria? I think I'm going to go to the sales estimates list because the long list, I don't have it in front of me, and I'll mark them for you, and I'll send you a sheet that has colors for tier 1 and tier 2, which I can, by the way, send to everyone. Why don't I?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you
like. I think, but this is the state of today. This is what I'm seeing today. This can change tomorrow. You know, there could be another economic challenge. All of a sudden, USA break down. We have a crash, and now we're tier 2. So I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. I would do invest money into stocks. I don't. So I can give you what I see today, and then obviously kind of a little bit also depends on the bank. I'm not the bank. I can tell you what I as an investor see as a tier 1 and tier 2. The bank might say to you, well, we don't entirely agree with Jeanette because this is actually a tier 2 for us. And it even changes with the banks, that you go to. Not every bank might have the same approach for tier 1 and tier 2, but the bases are the same. So I'm going to send you a basic structure for tier 1 and tier 2 on the sales estimates. And I'm going to circulate that with everyone. I'm going to make a little quote note here. Tier 1, tier 2. Okay, got it. So any more questions? Because if we don't have any more questions, we would be done. I'm doing office hours after this, and I know some of you guys have signed up. I'm going to do them all online. So I'm going to stop this recording, and then I'm going to go back online. I think, Marilyn, you and I should probably meet right after. I don't think I have, what time is it? I think you and I had a meeting at noon, I think. So why don't we get on at noon, your time, back on this link.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everyone has like 20 minutes to half an hour that I talk to them about stuff. So if you have assigned time, just log on to this link. If you don't have a set time and you do want to talk today, just send me a quick email or text, and then I'll plug you in. I'll be doing this for 3 hours today, so feel free to bug me. Yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry, maybe you have mentioned this and I missed it, but the P&A cost is fairly low, therefore it's not in the examples of the financial recoupment
Hold
Excel?
on. Why do you say it's low?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just making an assumption.
No, it's not low. It's expensive. It's the most expensive thing in many cases. So here, let me talk
Got it.
about P&A total. That's actually a great point. So I have paid anywhere for a theatrical movie with an A-level star. I will talk to a studio that I am renting, in this case, to release my movie about what they think the release campaign should be. So they'll tell me, your movie with Halle Berry, she's eaten by sharks. Okay, we think this warrants a 1,000 screen release because it's A-level star, it's an action movie, it's sharks. That shit usually flies, for lack of a better word. We would release it on 1,000 screens. So I will then talk to them about, well, what should I calculate for P&A? And I have paid anyway as low as $1,500 or 1,000 sometimes to like $5,000 per screen. So if the studio tells me we'd like to look at this as a $5,000 per screen release, and it's on 1,000 screens, 5,000 by 1,000, whatever that is. So I have to get an investor to pay for that, because the studio in this case would not pay for it because I'm doing a rental deal. So in that case, my investor says, I'm going to give you the P&A. I'm going to charge you a premium. That premium is usually anywhere between, I've paid anywhere between 12.5 to 20% on P&A. So that goes on top. So it could be quite a bit. And it really depends on what the release campaign would be for this movie. And it's very project driven. If it's a small arthouse movie, it would be 100 screen release in specified cities and specified theaters. And then the campaign would maybe target just a certain audience, a certain way. So the marketing team kind of figures out, it's usually the marketing team with the studio that figures out how much money is supposed to be spent in what section. Are we doing social advertising online? Are we doing billboards? Are we doing ads in the radio and on TV? Where do we spend the money? So they have a conversation within themselves depending on what the project is. So I'm hit with whatever the amount is that they feel that they need to make this a strong campaign for people to be aware of it. And they really target it to the audience. I mean, studios are so good at this. And they get paid for this. So they get paid for the service of building the campaign. They get paid for the actual release. And they tell me how much money they want. So I then go to my P&A investor and say, we're doing it with Warner Brothers. Usually it's not Warner Brothers. It's more likely Paramount because they do these deals. So you go to Paramount and then they say, here's what we think this should be. And then you go to your P&A investor and say, here's what I think I need. I'm renting it, but Paramount is going to do the release for me. And they think it should be on so and so many screens. And what do you want? So the P&A investor then says, I want this money and I want 20% on top. So now let's say they're charged, let's say they're charged $10 million in P&A. And they want 20% on top. So I'm paying back $12 million in P&A. In many cases, it's actually half the budget, the same as the budget, even more than the budget. It depends on what your movie is. It depends on how wide you're going. So that money would be recouped from box office revenues and from any other box office deal you do. If it's a rent-a-studio deal, you basically pay the studio only its fee, which is usually somewhere around 25%. The fee is usually lower when you do this. And then if they have some expenses, you pay that. And then anything else you get when you sell the movie in the box office, what sticks with you is what you can pay this back with. You have to obviously consider the fact that you're paying the exhibitor, the theater owner, a percentage. That could be upwards of 50%. You're then paying the studio, which could be a distribution fee of 35%. So there is a lot of money that gets deducted before it even goes to the P&A investor. And then maybe you sell it to a network or a streamer or online. You have all these sales revenues coming from the US, and those are your collateral for the P&A. So the P&A investor is its own little bubble that looks at what is this territory worth, what is the box office value that we could estimate, and how much other revenues do we have in that territory, and that's where they recoup from. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Well, sure. I love your questions. Keep them coming. Anyone else? You guys are so quiet today. No more questions? Okay. All right. So I will let you. Yeah. Go, my dear.
Examples of companies that lend against music rights?
Yes. There's two that I work with. One is called Cutting Edge Music, and the other one is called Atlantic Film Group, I believe. I'm going to look them up for you, and I'll send you to those two.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Cutting Edge for sure. I work with someone called David Morris. They're in England. So is Atlantic. Is it Atlantic Screen? I have to look it up. And I work with someone called Simon Fawcett. They're both in England, and I can send you their contact information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, are we good? Do you guys want to head out into your Saturday and have a nice weekend? Perfect. I shall let you go. All right, thank you guys for everything. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Actually,
Thank
hold
you.
on. Don't sign out. I'm not seeing you on Saturday. I'm seeing you on, hold on. I'm seeing you on Friday. I'm going to try to move it to Friday. I hope you don't kill me. Because I'm going to be on a plane on Saturday. I'm going to Germany. I have to visit my mommy. So I might have to shift it. I'm going to see when my plane goes. So be alert. I might have to do Friday instead. And I might do it Friday evening for those of you who have to work. I'm so sorry. Usually don't.
I just thought of one quick question.
Yeah,
We have the
Joseph.
midterm coming up this week, right?
Do we? Isn't it not next week?
I think, is it week
I think it's next
6?
week. Yeah,
Next week? Okay.
I think.
Any
I have
tips
no
on that?
idea.
No
The-
idea? Okay.
I have to look it up. It's
Okay.
sometime, I know it's sometime in the middle. As I said,
Okay.
I don't really pay attention to deadlines, so do it whenever you can do it. But
Okay.
it might open up this week, or it might already be open.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
guys,
So it's similar to everything we've been doing, the quizzes and
The
everything.
midterm is a little different because you get the joy of doing multiple choice. You're obviously going to have one case study in there. And I think there are 2 or 3 essay questions. And
Okay.
you always do well when you read a little trick I'm sharing, read the module summaries.
Mhm.
Most of it is in
Yeah,
there.
I have one thing for you.
Yeah. Oh my God. I am dying. What's her name?
Her name is Kita.
Kita. Oh, look at that. Oh, Victoria, I have to come visit and cuddle. It's so adorable. Oh my God, I love all your pets. Okay, next time I see you, I want to see all the pets. All right, guys. I let you go. Have a lovely weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Thank
you.
Okay.
All right. Marilyn, we're logging off. We're logging back on in 2 minutes.
Okay.